this is the thing, is that when someone calls you and asks you for your help and they're looking to bring you on, once you agree with the terms, okay, like your salary is $100,000 a year, it's $150,000 a year plus benefits, and you know that everything's all set, they're going to be asking from you a demand level that's at least double what your value is to what they're paying you.
Welcome to the Private Chef podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hannes Henche, and on our show we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome back to the Private Chef podcast. I'm your host, Hannes Henche. We've been hearing the career journey of private chefs and agencies. This time we're going to explore the journey of an experienced estate manager. We're delighted to have Daniel Eller with us today. He works as an estate manager consultant for ultra high net worth families in the US, having over a decade of experience in the industry. This will surely be an interesting conversation, speaking to a man that is used to wearing many hats, making the impossible possible. Today we're going to focus on how his journey went, becoming an estate manager, and what it is like working with ultra high net worth families. So thank you so much for joining us today, Daniel.
My pleasure. It's great to meet you, Hans, and I really appreciate you providing this wonderful platform for private estate, professionals or chefs, whoever works in the private, service industry. I think is very lucky to be able to have you here. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words at the beginning. And let's dive right in. What was your personal journey like coming into this very particular industry that you learned to love?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So, my journey started years ago. I'm 31 years old, and it began when I was about 12, and I started working in my family catering business. And from a very young age, I was very fortunate to be able to serve in very high net worth homes. And I'm talking about the 1% of the 1%. These are individuals who, have created vast, net worths. And basically, all they really care about at the end of the day is how to elevate their current life, because their lives are very busy. And, someone who's looking for the staff that we, implement in the home, or if you're a private service professional in terms of a chef or an estate manager, they want to know that these individuals can execute on the work that they're looking for them to be done. So, I started serving hors d'oeuvres when I was 12 years old in very high net worth homes, art galleries, high-end golf resorts, and, really you name it. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was, managing weddings, very high-end events, and basically gaining very deep knowledge on how to put together functions for high net worth families and individuals. And by the time I was 22, one of our clients, which we were doing their Easter party for, basically came up to me and said to me in the kitchen, he said, "What do you do when you're not, helping the family business out?" And, I was 22 at the time. I'm 31 now. And I said to myself, I want to learn real estate. I want to do all types of different things. And he said to me very simply, "Can you come to my house and help me with this iCloud nonsense?" And so, he's not really tech savvy, and he kept getting an iCloud message on his phone. And so I looked at that as potential entryway to maybe work for him personally. And I did not understand, what capacity I would work for him. But I just thought that this might be a good opportunity to potentially get closer to a client that we've been serving for many, many years. So I went to his home and completed that task of the iCloud, issue that he had on his phone. And he said to me, "So what else do you know how to do?" And I told him, "Look, I can do a lot of things." And he said, "Well, why don't you make sure all my cars have all the stickers on them and, that they're all registered and they all have insurance." So from that very small task, it went from managing his cars to hiring chefs, to bringing in more housekeeping staff. He's a 20,000 square foot home. So, he only had one housekeeper. And, there's a lot of fundamental rules that go into how to manage a property without burning out your staff and overly working the people who encompass a service environment. So I didn't know those things at the time, but I just knew that the home was too large for one person to be in charge of basically cleaning the entire home and dealing with all the housekeeping needs. So, I had worked steadily in that position for 5 years, and encompassing all the daily activities, such as managing the daily vendors, the electricians, the plumbers, people who take care of the gym, people who take care of the pool, to the daily staff, people who take care of the principal's needs directly, the housekeepers, the chefs, the security people, and the list goes on and on. Grounds people who take care of the gardens, people who take care of the snow plowing. A lot of moving parts. A lot of these homes, they move like businesses, and there has to be a head of the chain of command of the day to day, so that the principal can focus on their business. And I stepped into that role and developed myself in a really organic fashion by just finding out what the needs of the principal are, what goes on every day in the home, and how can those things be streamlined so the principal has a smoother lifestyle. And so after 5 years, I discovered that actually what I'd been doing was something called an estate management role. And this is someone who manages a home over 18,000 square feet. And so I looked into different courses in different schools, and there's a school called the Starkey International Institute of Household Management, which I went to, and I offered to my principal to send me there, and he paid the $10,000 fee. And I told him, look, this is going to make me a lot more skilled and more, efficient, because I'll be able to understand deeper, how to better serve you. And he liked that. So, they accept only 200 applications, and then they basically bring in only 5 people into the course. So it's a very selective course. And it's the equivalent of, of like a bachelor's in hospitality, because what they do is they take your 5 years that you've already worked for a principal, and that's what they take as experience in the business. So I was very fortunate to have been able to go there. And, I just left him 2 months ago, and I've actually branched out into the consulting side of the business, because, what I realized is people have been calling me a lot on LinkedIn for my advice. And we all know that advice is not always free. It's great to give people some tips, but in the end of the day, knowledge is value. And when you've amassed a certain amount of knowledge in your craft, you have every right to monetize on that. So, in a sense, I am an estate manager, and I really do enjoy the work. But I've also stemmed into more of like a consultant role as well, because a lot of private, staffers or personal assistants call me and say hey, we have an issue with housekeeping, or it's hard for us to retain chefs, or we really don't know what kind of the best security we should hire for our home. What do we do? And these are not simple one sentence answers. These are long conversations that take sometimes weeks to digest and understand kind of the different moving parts of the principle. And so in turn, when you're spending weeks of your time with somebody, that's obviously going to cost some money. So, but in the end of the day, I'm always about how to add value to the principal and the staff's life. Whenever I go into a principal's life, I always try to find out what are the top 5 priorities, what needs to be done, and you just work from there. You just you prioritize the needs, and then slowly you're going to have a list of 20 or 30 things that are ongoing, which you're going to be updating the staff and the people involved in the service environment as to what's happening every day, right? So you can't walk into, I always say this to private service professionals who are looking to get in the industry. You're not going to walk into someone's life and just solve all their problems in one day. It's just not going to happen, and it's not a realistic expectation to set. And what I find is that a lot of private service professionals, they go in there trying to tackle too much, and they burn out very quickly. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of like a funny one. So I took on a client that, lived in a very remote area in the United States. And I'm talking very remote, like one supermarket in the town, hardly a gas station. And basically, there's only like 2,000 people who lived in the area. And he wanted to beam a direct fiber cable from a local cell phone provider's tower to his home. So he said to me, one of the very first projects I need you to do is look into this. And so, because his internet service apparently was terrible and he was not able to run a multi-billion-dollar company from his home, right? So
and he didn't have
I came in
Starlink
there
yet.
and I started calling. He actually did have Starlink, but he was getting poor service, very poor service,
unfortunately.
because he was not running Starlink business. He was running Starlink, for just homes, not business. So that was actually, it's funny you brought that up, because that was one of my first solutions that I offered to him, was do the Starlink business. And he had gotten some remedy from that, but it wasn't good enough because the home was 30,000 square feet. So I started calling around to these providers, and they told me it's a 90 to 120 day waiting period because, obviously they have to run, fiber optic cables 11,000 feet away from the home, and they have to pull permits from local town municipalities. And it's a whole process, right? And it costs like, 20 or 30 grand. And the principal, I sent him an email regarding this, and he calls me back and says, I don't care. I want it done tomorrow. And, there's not much that you can say to a person like that. I mean, look, you want to serve clients to the best of your ability, but sometimes in life, things are way out of your scope and your control. And this is one of them. This is a really good example as to kind of like, okay, so what are my options if it's not done tomorrow? Okay, well, I guess we're not working together anymore, and that's totally okay. But you have to be willing to pull the rug on people who have billions of dollars and not be afraid of them. Because if you don't have that type of shark skin, you will not succeed in this business. Because people who have a lot of money, yes, we respect them, we want to help them, we want to serve them. But then sometimes you have ones that just don't understand or don't have any regard for what and how much time it takes to actually do something. And, my grandmother used to always say, if you try to catch too much honey, you catch nothing. So for me, that's always been something in the back of my mind. Like, if you try to do too much, the quality of your work will diminish. And so if you know that your client has top 5 priorities, try in the best way possible, in the most cordial way, to say, like, look, my job is to serve you and provide you quality work. And if I try to take on too many things at once, I'll end up not being as efficient as you want me to be. So I would always say, like, look, it's better that we just tackle the first 5 things and go on to the next 5 things, right? Nobody can work in an environment that you're constantly being bombarded for, an answer or an update every 5 minutes. This is an executive level position. And when high net worth individuals call me, they're not calling me to micromanage me or tell me how long something is going to take. I'm the professional in that industry, right? Like, you're a chef. If someone told you, hey, look, cook a 5-pound tenderloin in 10 minutes because my guests are going to be here in 20 minutes, I mean, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do. Tenderloin doesn't even come in 5 pounds. It comes in, 3 pounds, So it's just like, you have to be able to finagle things when you can, but sometimes there are things that are just completely beyond your control. And in this business, sometimes what I'll see out there, okay, I'll get like a job request, and it'll be like a list of things that they're looking to get done. Like, we need an estate manager to take in the mail and cook us light meals and, do some light house cleaning and take the kids to school. Like, look, it's all great. And it's an amazing thing to know what you need and what you want. But estate managers don't do certain things. And it's not that they don't want to do them, but let me give you perspective. You wouldn't have the CEO of Dell or Microsoft, you wouldn't ask your CEO to go into the bathroom and clean a toilet, right? I mean, it's not like I wouldn't do the job, but
You know,
it's in the same role, you know?
it's funny that you said.
It's
I'll add something to this. Just a couple years ago, I
sure.
interviewed with an extremely wealthy family, well known in the public domain, one of the top 100 richest families in the world. And they asked, they posted for a chef. And I interviewed with them, and they were like, yeah, and we also expect you to clean the bathroom occasionally and do the laundry. And I'm like, you're not looking for a chef here. Like, I don't know what your arrangement was
Right.
before you put this ad in, but you're not looking for a professional chef like me. And it turned out the original engagement that they have in the primary residence was a housekeeper that started cooking. So the principal wasn't too
Right.
crazy about the cooking part at
Right.
all. It was like this old school arrangement of a lady that spent almost 30 years in that household, and she turned into someone who also cooked
Right.
for them. And so they weren't looking for a
Right.
chef. And like a week later, I saw a different position posted where it made a lot more sense. But I'm pretty sure they had like a couple of interviews with chefs like myself. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm pretty sure you're not looking for a chef given on everything you're saying right now.
Right, right. You're absolutely right, and you're spot on with kind of like what's circulating out there. And this is a major challenge that a lot of private service individuals have right now, because like, look, if you're hiring a chef wants to come in and cook for the family, and that's the primary role. I would never have my chef do something that's way beyond what he's there to do, right? And it's the same thing that goes with an estate manager. An estate manager is someone who coordinates everything in the home, from the staff to the vendors, and makes sure that everybody in the service environment, in the container, is doing what they have to do, so that in the end of the day, the home runs like a five-star oiled machine, right? You wouldn't, what I'm starting to see a lot in this business is that a lot of principals want estate managers to do heavy Excel spreadsheet work. And to speak quite frankly, this takes away a lot from the efficiency and what the roles of an estate manager does. An estate manager, is not a finance person typically. Do they do budgeting? Yes, but in a more basic, way. Like if a client tells me, hey, look, I have $100,000 to build a new gym, then I make an Excel spreadsheet with $100,000 at the top and start deducting, the different parts of the project that are going to cost, in order for the scope to get done. Right now, if we have 10 vendors and it's going to cost 110,000, then we're 10,000 above budget. But my job is not to create, crazy Excel spreadsheet formulas and, these crazy analytics that a lot of clients are looking for. It's not what an estate manager does. An estate manager is the direct contact for a principal in everything that goes on in the house every day. Hey, was the gym worked on today? Hey, how's the renovation in the back of the house going? How's the scope going with the electricians or the plumbers? Like, give me an understanding on how we are with our timeline, and encompassing everything else in the life of the principal. The day to day. The weekly menus, the supplies in the home, what needs to be done, and basically, I find that it's become more of a challenge showing the principals what they're actually asking for, as opposed to having a principal call you and say, hey, look, I need someone to come in and basically direct the traffic here. Because that's what we do. We're the CEOs of the home, but we're directing traffic all day long, right? If a principal has 10 cars, an estate manager needs somebody all day at the property, making sure that the cars are cleaned, that they're properly serviced, that they're being taken care of properly in terms of they all have insurances, they all have registrations, and the estate manager makes sure that those things are all in one place so that if somebody comes and says, hey, I need the insurance policy for the Ferrari or for the Mercedes, boom, you take it out of the Dropbox or the Google Drive, and it's all set. It's right there. But to sit here and ask for estate managers to be the paper boy or, to be the household custodian along with being a chef and taking the kids to school, a lot of these high net worth clients need to understand what they're asking for. And it all goes in educating the client properly. But this is the thing is, education is knowledge. And a lot of private service professionals are giving a lot of their time and precious resources and energy for free. And I would say, look, to speak to a client for an hour is fine. But then to say, look, my time beyond that is $100 an hour or $80 an hour or whatever you value yourself or whatever that you can bring to the client, charge it because they're going to pay it anyway. I mean, high net worth clients are bleeding money every day. Are you looking to bleed them more money? No, you're looking to save them money and you're looking to treat their money as if it's your money because that's why they're hiring you. But when it comes to you giving knowledge and adding value, I would say always find a way to position yourself in a place where you can, recoup your time and monetize it to the best way that you can.
Yeah, I think this is a crucial piece to the puzzle. It's also a common thread that I see on our monthly meetups of the private chef inner circle that we have is there are some people who don't exactly yet know how to value themselves. And I've seen some people in the industry being grossly underpaid, being quite taken for a ride by the principals, and just like what you said, they would do all kinds of things, cooking, nanny on occasion, piano teacher, taking the dog out. And we're like, which job description does that apply to? And then the pay isn't even giving you a living wage in the city. So those kind of things, I think that's really something where we as individuals in the industry also need to learn our worth, and we shouldn't feel intimidated simply because we're dealing with very wealthy and maybe powerful individuals.
Yes. And I do think that you bring up a great point. And I think that this is the main issue is that a lot of individuals, especially if they're under 30 years old or under 25 years old, right? And they're just getting started in this business, they know they're going to get on the phone with a person or a family or an individual who is, potentially worth billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars. And to them, that's like a very intimidating thing. But something? These people are just like you and me and everybody else in this world. They wake up in the morning, they take a shower, they get dressed, they have their breakfast, and they go to work and they make phone calls and they get things done. And, they have a slightly different way about them because obviously that's who they are and that's what made them successful. But in the end of the day, we all have needs. We all have, aspects of our lives that need to be addressed. But I would always say is look at a person as the person that they are. They're a business owner. They own a large home. They have needs. And which area of those needs are you there to address? And how can you value that to them? I would always tell you, look, anybody who's coming into the private service industry, you have to know that these clients are spending probably anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 a day in various different areas of their life. Okay, and when they're coming to bring you on, whether you're a chef, you're an executive housekeeper, you're an estate manager, these roles are anywhere from $80,000 to $300,000 a year. So it's very important to keep in mind that if you're looking at it as yourself and as an estate manager, you're probably about $500 a day worth of help. And a chef is probably $200 or $300 a day worth of help. It depends, but if you look at it in the grand scheme of the $100,000 a day they're spending in various different areas of their life, whether it's a new Ferrari or a new car or, a new service or whatever it might be, I tell you, the $300 or $400 or $500 a day that they're looking to pay you, they're going to forget about it very, very fast once you're involved in their personal life and they're asking you to do so many different things
Yeah.
for them. You see, this is the thing, is that when someone calls you and asks you for your help and they're looking to bring you on, once you agree with the terms, okay, like your salary is $100,000 a year, it's $150,000 a year plus benefits, and you know that everything's all set, they're going to be asking from you a demand level that's at least double what your value is to what they're paying you. So I would always say, make sure that you're valuing yourself at least 1.5 times and coming to
Here,
at least where you need to be for the work. You know what I mean?
yeah, you know what I used to tell my friend every time he would ask me, he's like, "Hey, Hannes, do you think I'm negotiating properly?" And I'm like, "No, you're not you're not putting in." I use a specific term. It's like, you have to make sure that the pain is already built into the pricing. Like, because you will experience more pain than you think. It's not going to be as nice as you think. You will stand there more often than you think, late night, early night. You will spend more hours than you think. Make sure, no matter what happens, that's all priced in.
Yes. Yes. You're absolutely right. And you just, when we talk about the pain, it's like, you know, ultra high net worth families and individuals, they're expecting you to be there on holidays and, in times where you should be with your family. But that's the sacrifice we make being in this business. And, I was in a negotiation once with a client in the south of the United States. And he said to me, "Well, why should I pay you all this much?" And I said, "Look, you know something? For me to get up every morning and look at myself in the mirror and know that all the blood and sweat and tears that I put in for your family and for your life and for your personal needs and everything to get done, I have to know that it's worth it to me." And I told it to him very straight like that. And he said to me, "No, I really respect you." And I was 28 years old at the time. And I didn't end up working for him, but I consulted with him for 5 months. And he paid me about 3/4 of my salary. But in the end of the day, I didn't end up working for him physically. I didn't have to move to the south part of the United States. I worked from home. And I actually helped him place an estate manager in his home. And I still was able to monetize some sort of value for myself and for him. And so, while you may not always take the position that you exactly dreamed of, sometimes it might work out in a better angle for you. So, it always makes sense to just be as creative as you possibly can, but also not to be afraid to say exactly kind of like how you see the situation. Don't be like, we can't, mistake being rude for being straight. We never want to be rude, but we want to be as respectful and kind and cordial as possible, but while being as straight up as you can and saying like, "Look, this is what it's going to take for me to get the job done."
Yeah. You've thrown in some averages there earlier, and you're like, this is kind of what this position is about. And this, one of the things that I personally learned in the industry is that while hiring might be based on an average in the industry, I would say staying with a family, an individual, a person can become nearly invaluable once they really hone in on what you, for example, said about, get those top priorities straight, understand their priorities, also understand their likes and dislikes, make sure that they're always being delighted. And I think that can greatly tip off your pay scale on a long-term trajectory, because once a family feels taken care of by you as an individual in their team, it can completely tip off from the average pay scale of your position.
Yes, definitely. And that's when you get into like all the other perks of the job. Like, yes, you have the basic benefits package, health, dental, 401k, all those great things. But then, as clients really establish you as a private service professional in their life, they begin to realize, yes, that you are probably invaluable to them, and it's very hard to replace somebody who's invaluable. So, they tag in different perks of the job, like bonus and, travel and, tickets to sports games and whatnot. But in the end of the day, I tell you, what makes me go home at night and feel good about this position is that I'm adding value to my principal's life, that I am making a difference, that I'm actually helping them. And, yes, we all want to make money, but, in this business, the stress is too high to even remember the money. Like, you don't think about, the $12,000-15,000 a month you're making when you're, dealing with 10 vendors and trying to put together a $200,000 proposal for a renovation for your principal. You completely forget the money, you forget the benefits, you don't even remember that those things exist. It's kind of like just at the end of the month, like water that you drink every day. It's like, oh, the money just is in my account. You you even forget to pay your own bills sometimes because you're so busy paying the principal's bills, right? So it's like you have to remember that you have to be ready for a very high level of stress. And while you're young, I would say between the ages of 25 and 55 in this business, you got to be really taking care of yourself while you're taking care of the clients. I have a very strict diet and I take a lot of supplements and nutrients. And I think that this is a part of the business that estate managers and even chefs and housekeeping don't realize, is that they are depleting themselves every day by working for the principals because of how much stress they go under. And they have to remember to take care of themselves too. And that's eating right and drinking enough water and, staying away from fast food, because look, the principals are relying on us to be at work every day and to show up and be healthy and execute on their needs. And so taking care of your own health is what's going to make you quite successful in this business. I had a friend of mine, another colleague in this business, who was an estate manager, who had a heart attack a couple of years ago, and he hasn't been able to work since. And I asked him, what was your diet like over the last 25 years? And it was all pizzas and fast food and never a home cooked meal. And, if you're making over $100,000 a year, there's no reason not to be able to take good supplements and have a good diet so that you can show up and perform for your principals really, really well.
Yeah. And I want to add to something you said, which is, you actually want to support them. And that's when you go home and you feel like you've served them well. And that's when you sleep well. And I must say, when I personally align with, I've worked for some people who did amazing work in the world, where I could just perfectly got myself behind what they were doing. And I was like, this was so fulfilling for me. On the flip side, I've also worked for families where I didn't feel that way at all,
right?
Where I felt they were literally just rich, and it was and they weren't inspiring whatsoever, where almost any day felt unfulfilling because I was just fulfilling whims of someone who wasn't inspiring me and who I didn't feel move the needle on a larger scale. Because sometimes it's just great to be part of something greater than ourselves. And for me, that could be, for example, supporting someone who's really moving something in the world into a direction that I personally appreciate.
Right. Absolutely. And, that goes into a lot about how a person transitions into this business. If you feel like you can give somebody, your skills and add to their life, like I did, like I saw in the principal that I was just catering their Easter parties for years. He came to me and he said to me what he said to me in the kitchen. And I realized, this might be a good transition to work for him personally. And that was a thought in the back of my mind. Nobody else in my family business even thought about that. It was just something that literally crossed my mind in that moment when he was talking to me. And that spiraled into an entirely new career step for me. And so you never know how you can be of added value to somebody. And so, I see a lot of, I have a lot of friends from childhood, their family owns businesses, and, it's their entire choice. They don't want it to do anything with their family business. They don't want to have anything to do with it. And, is that for better or for worse? Well, their life will determine that. But I would always say, if you have something that you have a foundation on, try to build on that. And if you don't have a foundation to build on it, well, then you got to start from the grassroots. If your way is to be an estate manager, I would say go Go be go try to be, a housekeeping staff. Try to work in the home. Try to get somewhat close to a principal. Figure out how you can, you know, get close, in a sense, like where you can just add value every day. Are you a plumber? Are you an electrician? Can you offer your services? Are you a maintenance guy at a local, housing authority that you have years of property management, where maybe you want to stem to just a single family home and, add your skills there. You got to be creative. People who are in the 1% or the 1% of the 1%, they've always been very creative in their life. I mean, not always, sometimes, this is generational wealth. These people have money that have been passed down to them, but in many cases you have new money, and the new money wealth, these are younger individuals, people in their late 30s, early 40s, early 50s, and they knew what it was like to struggle. And they know that, to get into a certain situation, you're going to have to be creative. And you're not always going to be able to have all of the skills to come to the table, but at least 75%. And sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, right? That's part of
Yeah.
the business. You have to just, kind of finagle things until you get a grasp on it. It's the fear. Okay. What makes you successful is dealing with the fear every day. You're not always going to know how to do something, but if you are resourceful enough to figure out who you need to bring into the picture, then you can be successful. And that's a major part of this business. Is you are faced with challenges every day that you're not going to know how to do. Like, okay, like I told you about the cell phone tower, right? I never called, AT&T or their, creative business solutions department to discuss how I could get a direct ADI fiber cable run to a home and what the process would be. But now, on the next principle that someone asks me, how did they do this type of business, I already have the answer, and I have a contact in those businesses, at AT&T, that I can call right away. So, if you are able to persevere through challenges that you don't know how to accomplish, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. But just
Yeah.
know that you have to be good at researching. You have to be good at calling people and basically being resourceful. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And you have to build a network, just like you said. Now you have a direct contact, and the more people you have in your Rolodex that know you and you know them, the easier it is to get stuff done. So by having a solid network, it really amplifies what we're doing.
Yes, definitely. And I was fortunate that, the last principal I worked for was a very dynamic guy. He would fly a lot privately, so I have a lot of contacts in the private jet industry. I have a lot of contacts in the jewelry business. He would buy a lot of different types of, jewelry. And, you never know just like the types of needs and lifestyle that a person would want, right? For their life. So just by that inherent need that a person has things that they need to get done, you're going to be on the phone with so many different people. It could be, a specialized marble, tile maker in Italy that, the principal wants to import to his home. And so you don't, you're not familiar with how people are in Italy or how people speak or how people, do business. And so, you might have to take a flight to Italy to go look at the tiles, right? You might have to go speak to these people. And, that is, in the end of the day, all the cost of the principal, right? So that is for your exploration right there. And that's for you to realize, like, wow, this is not only going to be a learning experience for me, but also an experience to travel the world and understand the different mentalities that people have every day in order to do what they do. I mean, look, a tile maker in Italy is being called from a principal in the United States. This is an exciting thing. Somebody wants, your work in their house 5,000 miles away from them. And, this is, by nature, a very exciting conversation to have, and that's someone that I would say that if you're not excited to have conversation and do business and figure out these types of challenges, I would say probably the private service industry is not for you. But if you're somebody who has an entrepreneurial mindset and who believes that they can solve pretty much any problem, that a person would have in terms of like a day-to-day needs. I mean, it's really just in the end of the day common sense, and that's what it comes down to, is just having fun, smiling even when it's stressful, and just trying to be as organized and as respectful as you possibly can.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really, but some of the tasks might have never crossed our mind before we entered those environments. Like there's some things that you wouldn't know till you've been in that industry. You know, there's just like, I mean, let's for example talk
Right.
about
Yeah.
private jet charter. That's just not on people's radar. Like the idea of rolling up on a private airfield directly almost to the airplane and just popping open the door, getting in, and off we go. That's like really reserved for the 1% of the 1%. So dealing with those kind of issues, that takes a little bit of warming up to it. Like, okay, how does this environment work? You know, how does and that could be as basic as getting used to, for example, the chat itself. Like, okay, how does this kitchen work? You know, and then the first time around, you're like, okay, I'm getting it, and then you speak to the pilot a little bit, and he shows you how to open the doors and different things. I'm like, okay, I finally get the hang of it. But that's something that even if I wanted to be creative, I couldn't possibly know without being in that position.
Right. Yeah. Look, it brings up, memories of my first few times that I booked private jet travel for my principal. You know, it was nerve wracking. You know, I was dealing with like a $60,000 wire transfer. I was dealing with his contact at the bank, and you know, I was fortunate enough that the principal had done business with that private jet company before, so it's not like we were just wiring money to people he never wired money to before, but I was handling the entire transaction. I was 23 years old at the time, you know.
Yeah.
And again, once the first couple transactions had gone through, I was like, wow, you know, this is pretty good. And then, you know, 2-3 years down the line, he's like, why don't you look for another company, because we're going to be flying to France this year to go to the International Boat Show to look at a Palmer Johnson. And I know that the company that we do only does national jet charters. So I had to look for a new company who did international stuff and had a very good reputation, and also had, my principal only wanted to fly on new planes and was not interested in basically, you know, dealing with a company that, you know, had an older fleet. So, you know, dealing with a new company and onboarding, you know, a company that's going to fly your principal across the world and you've never flown with them before is a little bit nerve wracking. And, you know, I was on that plane too. It ended up being very, very pleasant experience. You know, we took the plane to Cannes, France with 16 of his friends, and it was a great time. But, you know, it was funny because the boat that we went to go see was a $60 million boat, and it had a major engine failure the morning that we were going to do the tour of the boat and
Such a
basically
bummer.
do a sea test. So the principal was really bummed out and really upset. But, you know, even being a billionaire and having all the money in the world couldn't stop an engine failure, right?
Yeah.
So he was kind of forced to just enjoy the rest of the week and and just have a good time in the country that we were in. But, you know, it just shows you like what can happen. Like, you know, you can plan everything A to Z and you know, have everything lined up, and then you get a call from the yacht captain like, hey, you know, there's been a major engine failure. We can't show the boat today. You know, so it just shows you like the dynamics of the business and what can happen, and just to be prepared. Like look, I spent 6 months on quotes and dealing with vendors for a kitchen renovation that was going to cost $200,000 for the principal. And in the end of the day, the principal, you know, when I went to the principal and said, hey, look, we got to make a decision here. The vendors want to, you know, basically concrete a time in the schedule to do the renovation. And he said, you know what, I'm going to buy the new Ferrari. And he ended up spending 450 grand and didn't do the kitchen for another 2 years. So, you know, it's like a lot of times, you know, you're going to spend a lot of energy and time into your work. And, you know, a lot of private service professionals get frustrated and, you know, basically think that that's like a waste of their time, but it's not. It's the principal's decision. You were there to offer an option, and the option was not taken, and that's totally
Yeah.
okay. and that's fine. And you just have to
I'll
have thick
add
skin and just let the principal, decide what they want.
I'll add something to that, because I've seen renovations actually executed while the principal was away. Principal coming back in and it's like, oh, this is not how I imagined it. Please rip it back out and do it like this, okay? And this time make sure it's like this. And as somebody who managed that, people are just standing there and like, are you kidding me? But as you said, there was an option. In this case, they did
Right.
execute the option, but still, it's not what they want, and they're willing to pay for whatever it takes. Just change it, and change it quickly, because now I'm actually staying at this state.
Right. Absolutely. And a lot of people get put aback by that, and it can set people aside and say like, look, why did I even take this job? And how did I put myself in this position? And why am I in this scenario? But it's like, I would always say, don't take anything personal. It's, in the end of the day, you're there to provide the option. And if the option was not taken by the principal and they decided to do something else, well, it's still on the table for later. So, and you got the work done.
Yeah.
So I would always try to look at things as positive as you possibly can in this business, for sure, 100%.
I have one question for you, Daniel. For people that are maybe on the edge on the industry, who haven't found their way in, maybe even chefs, how would you prefer them to contact someone like maybe yourself, who is an estate manager, who could potentially, give them a job or give them a chance, or at least connect them? What would you say is the most graceful way for them to reach out to someone if they don't yet have a connection?
So, right. So I would tell you, like, look, and this is not to sound like I'm better than anybody in the industry. Like, so many people have so much to offer here. And I never step on anyone's toes. I always say, like, if someone's in this business and they appear to have value in terms of their experience and what they've done, just send them a kind, email or a LinkedIn message and say, hey, look, my name is so-and-so. I am a chef. I'm a security person. I'm a plumber. I'm an electrician. I'm looking to get into the, high net worth arena. And I would like to have a conversation. I'd be interested in speaking with you about this. And just know that sometimes, like a guy like me, I'm happy to get on the phone for, half an hour, and discuss and speak about kind of like the different skills and different areas that would be suitable as a market entry to be able to work with a person like this, or even maybe get a connection. But sometimes, you have people who call you and just want to spend, 5-6 hours on the phone, or they want to develop a friendship and just constantly call you and ask you for knowledge and advice. And this is when I would say, hey, look, like, in all due respect, you're a great person. I appreciate your tenacity, but this is my, hourly rate to be on the phone for consulting. And that's something that I would say to just be prepared for. Like, sometimes you're going to have to spend a little bit of money to get the knowledge that you're looking for to propel you in the direction that you're looking to be. I have in many cases, I have called people who were just, hey, look, they told me like, hey, look, brother, my time is so-and-so. And in order to get this type of information from me, I have to set aside time. And this is what it's going to cost you. Like, I've spent $500 with someone who's a private consultant, for high net worth individuals. And I just wanted to pick his brain for like a couple hours. And I had to break it up in a 2-week span. And each time I paid like, I don't know, $200 or $250 to the guy. And it ended up being really, really worth my time. But, it's like, it's more simple than usual. Like, I have in my inbox right now probably like 13 or 14 messages that I haven't even been able to look at yet from this week alone. And Hannes, when I saw you reach out to me, I was like, wow, this is a pretty interesting guy. He's a chef. He has a podcast. He's got like, an investment company. This is an interesting fellow. I'd like to talk to this guy. And that was at 3:00 in the morning when I had like a minute to just breathe. I was, just done sending emails, and I realized there was a lot of people that sent me messages on LinkedIn that day. And I was like, wow, it's an interesting person. I want to talk to you. So I was pretty grateful, to reach out, that you reached out to me, and that we were able to speak, because a person who has a podcast for the private service industry it's kind of like a rare thing, and to be able to get your voice out there in a very organic way and just talk about some of the challenges that we all face, for others who are looking to get in the business, I think is a really noble it's a very noble journey to have and to embark on. So I'm very grateful to be able to be a part of that.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and likewise, thank you for making the time and sharing all of the insights, because I think this has been very valuable for everybody who's listening to that, including myself. And I very much enjoyed the conversation. And what you said is also, it's really why I embarked on this journey, why I kind of tried to put this platform together, is so that people like you and me can directly speak to people that are looking to find a segue into the industry, or are curious about it. Because just like you said, I didn't see it out there, which is, I thought there's a need for it. I thought people would appreciate it. So thanks for being part of it.
Definitely, and just to, if I could just end here with something else that you probably want me to, talk about for your users and for your viewers here, is that, if there's a lesson that I've learned in this business, it's that we're all human in the end of the day. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how much money you make. We all have needs, and we all have families, and we all need to advance in life. And anyone who's in the private service industry, serving a high net worth family, is a very well needed person in these individuals' lives. And to never hold yourself for less than what you are. We have to be graceful, we have to be respectful, but we also have to remember what we are worth. And the lesson is that you just need to have enough self-respect to be able to be successful, because, if you don't, you will be stepped on, and you won't go home feeling good and successful at the end of the day. And to be successful, you got to be proud for what you do. And what that means is in the end of the day, you have to have a service heart. And I've learned about myself is that I have a service heart, and that means that I like serving people who have needs that I can be successful at, delivering on them for them. So definitely, I wish all of your viewers a lot of success in this business. And if anybody would like to reach out to me, I'm an open door. They can reach me on LinkedIn or via email at their convenience, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, we will also make sure to add that to the show notes. So thanks again, Daniel, for your time. This was a very interesting conversation from a very different angle, because, as I said, usually we speak more to chefs. So it was great to have somebody who has a different point of view towards this entire part of the industry. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Hannes. And, as you being a chef, I grew up being a chef too, and I have a lot of respect for you, my man. I appreciate chefs in my life very, very much. Food is what makes our principals happy.
It's true. Food makes everybody happy.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, and looking forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.